Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever and whenever you're happy watching. This is Cisco in Tokyo coming at you with another Empty Room Reviews. And this time we're taking a look at the Exit 8, debbed and pubbed by Kotake Create with the release of November 29th, 2023. And the Exit 8 is a kind of love child of a walking simulator and a spot the differences puzzler. You're attempting to navigate your way through this kind of haunted station and reach the titular, the Exit 8, and get on with your life. As far as the gameplay, it's simple to the point of elegance. All you can really do is walk around, look around, run periodically if you do need to run, and that's pretty much it, and that's all you need. You are in this tunnel, and it is a looping tunnel. You are charged with the task of spotting these anomalies. Why they're happening, we have no idea, but if you see an anomaly, you're supposed to go back the way that you came, and if you don't, you move forward, and either of those will move you up the chain to the next exit, and if you screw it up, you'll get tossed back to exit 0 and have to start it all over again. The anomalies generally tend to come in two flavors. There's ones that are relatively easy to spot. They're right there, they're in your face, they take up a lot of screen. Sometimes they rush at you, and if you don't get away from them, they'll force you into the reset. And there's anomalies that are pretty subtle. You really do have to take a look around and pay attention to your surroundings and see what may or may not have changed. And when you do notice them, it's like, oh my god, like how could I have missed that? But no, it's really honestly quite easy to miss some of those. In my notes I have that the initial play is mid to high difficulty, but on further plays it'll probably drop down to be significantly easier. And in actual practice, going back to play for the B-roll footage, and I do stand by that, if you've got a functional memory and you're fairly observant, but I don't and I'm not, and it still took me about an hour to get through to the actual exit 8. And let me tell you, the frustration of getting to like an exit 7 or even the hallway for exit 8 itself and getting bumped back all the way to the start it's pretty high. That part did for me kind of suck, but I did have a lot of fun playing through it on my second playthrough, and I think I might have fun playing through it subsequently. Now, as far as the story, and what's your story? Why are you here? What are you doing? And what is keeping you trapped in your daily round? Because that's what Exit 8 was really speaking to me about, this looping narrative of our own lives, the inescapable routine that we must do to keep ourselves moving forward in the world and making sure we've got, money to keep the bread on the table or whatever it is that we are doing, and how hard it is to escape from that. I think about in my own life, and the major points of change in my life are, and both positive and negative, sometimes very positive, sometimes very negative, have all come down to, at the root, at the heart, something really small in my environment that I noticed and I took the opportunity to act on. And it makes me wonder, like, how many things in my life, how many opportunities have passed me by because I was wrapped up in the wall of dissociation and just locked in my own head to escape from the drudgery of my daily routine. And I feel like with Exit 8, it's like if you are noticing these things, then you can move forward. And if you miss them, then you are kind of set back to the beginning. Now, I don't know if that's what Kotake was thinking of when making this game. The reviews that I was able to read, the ones that have been translated in English, don't seem to give any indication of like what their actual thought was in the creation beyond making something that was mid-range, kind of psychologically spoopy. It seems like that's really what they enjoy doing, and you see that as well in Platform 8, which is the follow-up to this game. But I do feel like they would have to be aware of this and aware of that pattern of our lives reflected through the moving of like going to work and having to take the subway and things like that. So I feel like that's there, but the game itself doesn't really give us anything to go on. The game is what you see. It's right there, and you have to apply your own story to it. Now, as far as the presentation, and the Exit 8 just knocks it out of the park here, particularly for me because I do live here in Japan and I've been in that situation so many times. Like, switch up the details just a little bit, switch up the surrounding, but like that could have been my morning commute going up to Kobe when I was working there, going from Osaka and having to go through Midasuji Station and or Midasuji line to Osaka Station to get to the Kobe line and go up to work. And like it's so real, and it makes sense because Kotake did base this on real stations in Tokyo, one of which I actually went to visit that was the particular inspiration for one of the anomalies. And amusingly enough, although in my case not because I wasn't paying attention but because I went out the first time the wrong exit and then went in a different exit, I actually didn't see it. But then when I went to go home and I went in through this different exit, and it's like, oh my god, there it is, that's like the anomaly from the titular Exit 8. It was pretty fucking cool to see, to be absolutely honest, but it really does ground it in reality. Like, I've been in that subway tunnel before. The posters have such a vibe. Like, they're things that I have seen in my life. I recognize them immediately. I love seeing these things in games. I love seeing aspects of my life that I do recognize. Something I really loved when we played Yakuza 0, the Sotenbori sections are Dotonbori, that area of Osaka, which I was extremely familiar with. I spent lots and lots of time there. It was kind of how Osaka was when I first got to Osaka before Mayor Hashimoto did a lot of upgrades on that section, but I was like, oh my god, I knew that place. Or playing Persona Strikers, I think it was, where you go up to Sendai and you can actually see the building that my very first school that I worked at. You could see that building, and I was like, oh my god, I know that place. So like the Exit A did really, really speak to me. I love that aspect of it as well. But the presentation of the anomalies as well, and it's very interesting to me because you do have those two types of anomalies, the ones that are really, really easy to spot, and the ones that are a lot more like subtle, a lot more difficult to notice. And like, for myself, not to give too much information, but these are things I've talked about in the past, and I have had issues in my life with delusions. I've had issues with things that feel very close to hallucinations, and they often come in two stripes. There was ones that are very, very obvious. They're very visceral, oftentimes dealing with self-harm, and while they were very disturbing to me and not fun to experience, they did have cracks that I could kind of lever some sense into and at least recognize that this is not actually happening. Like, people would be reacting, I would be passed out on the floor, there would be noticeable blood everywhere, and that's not happening, so this can't be real. But I would also have periods of delusions that were much more subtle, that were much more all-encompassing. It's hard to explain, but sometimes I would experience things as though everything was flat, that things would look projected onto a screen, and that it was everything. It was the entire world, and my mind was saying to me that this is real. And it was really hard to argue my way out of that and to function, and usually I just had to kind of brute force my way through it and say, well, I can't say that this is not what's happening, but I have to act as though this is not the reality, because it can't be the reality. Or I would have issues where I would feel like my thoughts were coming in the present, but everything I was experiencing was in the past. Like it was an audio commentary track on a DVD, and it's a very isolating experience. It's very difficult to explain your way through that type of thing. And the more subtle anomalies in the Exit 8 do kind of feel like that, where you know something is wrong, you know that you've missed something, but you can't really put your finger on it. You can't point to it. You could be looking directly at it and just still not quite see it. And so on one hand, like, I appreciated those anomalies on a very visceral level because they felt very close to things that I had experienced, but on the other hand, I was kind of glad for the super big obvious ones that I could point to and say like, oh, that's definitely not real. That's definitely an anomaly because they were less psychologically damaging to me, I guess. So, yeah, that was part of my own personal experience with the Exit 8, and it was kind of a lot. Now, moving on to the streamability and the replayability, and this one was one that was, I mean, it was kind of harmed in a way by streaming it. I loved sharing it with folks. They really seemed to enjoy it, and the extra distraction of kind of keeping your eye on chat while also keeping the eye on the game made it a much more difficult play for me, which was kind of good because we wanted it to last the entire stream. But at the same time, like, I do find with games, especially games that have more of a psychological impact or more of an emotional impact, and I only get that first experience the one time. And I can either share that experience with chat or I can keep that experience to myself, but I can't do it twice. And with a game like, for example, with Signalis, where it is very much speaking to you on a psychological level, it is very much speaking to you on an emotional level, but at least there's like a pretty big game there where you could still like play it the second time, and maybe you don't really get that fresh experience of investment because you are anticipating things that are coming, but you could still kind of lose yourself in the game. With the Exit 8, though, like, had I played Exit 8 first, on my own, I don't feel like I could have really shared it with chat because, like, you already know all the stuff that's going on. So, like, I'm on one hand, I'm glad that I did it the way that I did it. I'm glad that I shared it with chat first, but it did take away a little bit of that experience of being able to immerse myself fully in the game and experience it just for myself the first time. As far as replayability and low to mid, I guess is what I'd want to say. Like, I do enjoy seeing the anomalies. They are really, really neat, and I do enjoy going back and seeing the craft of how the game was put together and how, like, such a simple game could be, built out into this experience. But the experience is a very small one. The experience is a very limited one. I mentioned that it took me about an hour to get through on my second playthrough to catch everything, but I feel like I would need pretty big gaps to kind of experience it as a game a third time or a fourth time. And mostly that if I did go back to it, it would be purely to just kind of, I want to see this one particular anomaly, and I want to check out, what that was like. But it's hard to see me coming back to this one again and again. Certainly not often, not like with Jumping Flash, where I feel like I could just play it to have fun with it. So for me personally, I would say that the replayability is relatively low. And that brings us to our takeaway, and I'd say it's a yellow square. It's a very soft yellow square. It's so soft that part of me almost wants to be a bitch and give it like the orange diamond just to be a bitch about it, but I can't. Like, I think that Kotake has done an admirable job with a very limited palette. It's very professionally done. It's very enjoyable to experience. It's just like really interesting, and all of those points I do think they speak to its quality, and I can't really give it the lower grade. But as I said with replayability, like, it's a very small game, it's a very slight game, the scope is very, very narrow. While I do feel like Kotake succeeded in reaching that scope, I think the goal was reached, it's really, really quite small. Now, the price is also really quite small. It's only 470 yen on the PlayStation Store. I think it's about $4 American if you're buying it in US dollary dues. So it's hard not to recommend. Like, I think it's really super cool. I think it's worth the play and the time investment and the money investment because they are pretty small. But yeah, orange square, yellow square, definitely a yellow square. And I think that pretty much does it here for us this go about. I'm trying something new where I'm recording the audio separately. Hopefully that doesn't sound too weird. Hopefully this is a good one for us, but I hope you enjoyed your time here with me because I always enjoy my time here with you. And that has to do it for us here this go around. So from me, Disco, here in Tokyo, to all of you out there, wherever you may happen to be, thank you, arigato, sayonara, see you, and ciao.